But really exciting topic today. Lots of you are going, how are you going to make this exciting, Scott? Because it's all about data, numbers, graphs, and charts, which lots of people don't find particularly fun. So we will try and make this interesting. But today's really about that sort of more high-level approach to what are we trying to get out of data? Why is data so important to our business? There is a bit of an explanation of Power BI, which hopefully many of you are expecting to come out of today's conversation. There's a few examples today as we go through this of how we use Power BI to pull data together. Hopefully that isn't too technical, but I'll try and keep it fairly high level. But really what we want to hone in on today is about the detail, the reason why data is important, okay, why it helps us understand and make informed decisions across the business. So we're about 2 minutes after. I've got Sam with me again, by the way. So hopefully, if anything goes horribly wrong, it's not on me to fix it. I'll get Sam. It's all on you, sir. So purpose of today then to power your SME growth with automated data analytics and AI. Okay, fantastic. And these are some of the points that we're going to be covering today. What is data? How does automation work with data? Was that useful? And obviously the ability of AI as always. So as we begin these processes, we've got into the habit now of doing this poll thing. So everyone seems to be kind of getting on board with that. So that's brilliant. So in a second, you're going to see a little pop-up appear. It's going to ask you a question, right? How much do you use data today? And what I mean by that is like, how informed do you make your decisions around direction change or changes in business process? How often do you base it on the data to drive your business in the right direction? And how often, or versus how often are you using basically your judgment? You know that it doesn't work particularly well over there. You probably haven't got the evidence to prove it, but you know that that thing doesn't work and it could definitely be better, but you don't really know why, or you haven't got the facts behind it. Because I feel like through my career, there's been plenty of time, or most of my career, it's been based on judgment. It's been based on the conversations that I've had with managers and their gut interpretation, their feel for how well or not very well they are a process is performing or happening. All right. So it's great to see lots of answers. So that's great. And really, what's wonderful is that actually there's quite a few out there that are probably like me that realise that data is incredibly important when you make a decision. Okay, if you don't make a decision based on facts, how do you know that actually it's going to turn the wheel slightly, right? Lots of you saying not enough. Great, wonderful. That's the reason we're here, and hopefully we can give you some answers and enforce or enhance that opinion of data being important, right? So today, what we're going to do, we're going to go through how to use data to improve decision making within the business, how to use data analytics and AI to get more out of it. How do we get that data and surface it in such a way that it's easy to digest? That's really important. How do we get to the actual meaning behind the data faster? We'll also cover obviously where to get some more information, and of course, as always, we'll have some questions at the end. So feel free as we go through this. If you want to fire questions into the chat, I probably won't stop to answer them at the time, but at the end of the webinar, we will run through some of the questions. So if you've got anything, I'll give it a go and see if I can answer it. If not, we will go and get proper experts to answer it for you. Okay, so now the Holy Grail is something like this, right? I want to be able to go and look at my data and ask it a question. And quite literally with Power BI, I can do that. I can use this widget, which we'll go into more detail in a minute, and I can go in and ask it questions. Now, I might not be a Power BI expert. I might not be able to brilliant Excel. I can't carve and cut up data, but I can use the English language. I can ask a question. And we're going to show you how to do this in a minute. But I just wanted to kind of show you what the end goal is here. All right, where do we want to get to? I want to be able to have a box, let it go in, and I ask it some questions about our sales in a territory in a particular location. It gives me the answer. That's the Holy Grail, all right? So how do we get to that Holy Grail? Well, there's a few bits of housework that we need to do first. We probably need to understand how some of this stuff gets stitched together, and also some of the abilities within Power BI as a whole, and how we can leverage that. And it's worth saying, just in terms of licensing today, probably the first question everyone asks me is, well, how much does Power BI cost? If you have a Microsoft 365 Business Premium license, you have Power BI, but only the ability to create reports for yourself at that point. All right. When you start to look at the Power BI Pro and the Premium licensing, that allows you to start to create reports that you can share with other people that also equally have Power BI Pro or Premiums. And there's also these things called Premium Workspaces, where you buy a workspace you create a report and you publish it, and everybody can kind of cut down and drill and move through it. But we will cover that in questions if any of you got more interest in that area. So, but today I've got a couple of videos for you to run through that we've set up. Really, the first thing is, how do we get all our data? What's the purpose of a dashboard? I know that I can log into my CRM platform and it's got graphs in it. That's great. I can log into my ERP system, into my whatever, into my sales platform. I'm already getting data. So what's the big advantage of Power BI? Let's talk about that in a second. How do we interrogate data? Why is it useful to be able to say, well, I've got this high level data, but I want to get further than that. I need to understand what it's actually telling me underneath. How to leverage some of that AI, and that's why we'll come back to the piece I showed you a moment ago. How to provide a snapshot for other people. Okay, so maybe they don't need all the information, but they need the headline raw pieces, and maybe they haven't got Power BI, and I want to give it to them in a different format. We'll cover you how to deliver on that, and then how to enable your teams, because it's great if you are in a senior management role in your organization. Great that you may have Power BI, you may be able to dig around, you may have access to this data. But if it then relies on you to convey that information to your team, we're missing a step there as well. And as I'm sure many of you that know me are very aware, we're always looking to improve, optimize, streamline business process for our customers. And leaving the door shut at senior management level isn't necessarily the answer, right? We want to ensure that we can empower our team members and our team leaders and our managers to make sure that they can make the right decisions and they can make informed decisions as well. And potentially see trends in data that you might not see at senior management level. So lots and lots of things to cover. But the really important thing to get out of today is we're not focusing particularly on Power BI. We're focusing on why is data important? Okay, why is making a decision important? And how do we get that information out? Okay. So how do we deliver all of our data in a single place? And this is the beauty of dashboards and the beauty of Power BI as a whole. I mentioned a minute ago, I could log into a sales platform, something like Salesforce, for example, and it will show me all the information about our net sales and the potentially our customers. We might be using it as a CRM as well. So we've got information on our customers within there. We've also got their sales, right? But we might not have loads of detail about the products that they bought, other than maybe a product SKU or a product line, for example. We also might not even be using it as a CRM, right? We might have our own separate, we might be using something like HubSpot, because that's what where the marketing activity starts. It starts on your website and it triggers through HubSpot, and then it eventually ends up in something like Salesforce when that customer goes from being an opportunity to being an actual customer, right? Or an account. And of course, then you've possibly got the operational side of the business. And I appreciate this might not apply to all of you, but hopefully everybody can relate to something here, right? Now, the issue is if I wanted to get that data today, I'd have to probably log into Salesforce, export all that data to a spreadsheet, and start to create graphs and bar charts and interrogate just my sales data in a little isolated bubble. I might, if I'm really good at Excel, then go and grab some CRM data and pull that down and put it on another sheet in my Excel workbook, and then I'd create a load of links and bits and pieces between it on my spreadsheet. Again, absolutely doable. And then you're going to create charts and graphs and things in Excel. Absolutely doable, but does require you to be pretty good at Excel, right? And to actually be able to create a lot of formulas and bits and pieces. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm particularly amazing at Excel. There are obviously people around me that are, but this is so much easier. This is all about grabbing data, putting it into Power BI, and dragging out widgets. And we're going to show you that in a minute. But what we're looking at here is a sales analysis dashboard, and that's what we're going to focus on today for the rest of the session. And what we're looking at is effectively a company called Prosware. They sell small electrical devices, covers, bits and pieces for phones and tablets, etc., etc. They sell in the US, okay, and you can see there at the top, we've got information coming in from our product catalog, our product library, showing the types of devices we sell and the actual products. All these things, they look like little SD cards as far as I'm concerned, but they're actually little tablets, 8-inch tablets, 7-inch tablets, things like that. Down the bottom, we've got some CRM data. That information may be coming out of our CRM platform dynamically, being pulled straight into the report. And we've also got sales data showing us the net sales by the states that we sell in, and that might be coming out of Salesforce. And what we're trying to do here is to aggregate all of the data sets we have across all of the different platforms in our environment. And we don't just mean platforms and software and bits and pieces. This could be spreadsheets, text files, emails, anything that's digital. Pulling it all together, putting it into a single pane of glass where we can create one report and visualize everything, but create relationships between these different types of data. That allows us to filter and cut and slice, which we'll show you a bit more of in a minute. So how do we actually interrogate data? So there we are. We're looking at that sort of very similar. This is Power BI, by the way, the interface you're looking at the moment. And just to make it a little bit easier, this is quite a complicated topic to explain, but on the very far hand side, you'll see an option for fields, right? These are tables. If you've ever used a spreadsheet, think of them like a spreadsheet with rows and columns, and they've all got various bits of data in them around date and geography and population, product and resellers and sales, etc., okay? And then the other side is the actual visual. So let's start interrogating our data. We're going to create a brand new tab at the bottom, very similar to how we do with Excel. Okay, it's called product sales. What I'm looking to do is to generate some insight into the sales of our product. Now, I don't want to start from scratch here. Well, I've got some filters on another tab that I'm going to reuse in my new view. So I'm going to go and grab our filters. This allows me to filter down certain areas like the category of device I'm selling and potentially on the right hand side the actual product. So the first thing is the type. Is it an e-reader, a cover, a pen? On the right hand side, it's what is the actual product. Okay, there are pictures. They might be coming straight off of our web store or where we've got photos of our products. And what it's going to do is when I paste those things, it's going to sync them. Just for those of you that use Power BI, it's going to sync those up so that if I put a filter on one tab and I flip to another one, the filter still applies. So I'm going to go and add something called a visual. This is just going to be a bar chart and to be very, very simple. And I expand some of my data and I say, I'm going to choose the month. I want a column based on month and then versus my net sales. And very simply, straight away, we've got some information. That data is being pulled live from my CRM platform, from my sales platform, all right? And we will talk about how that happens in a minute. But that is straight out of Salesforce, straight out of your CRM, for example. So we've now got a bar chart. Wonderful. I can see month by month by month the number of net sales. But I might want to complicate it a little bit more, and I can choose a different type of graph that gives me a line as well. And I've dragged in our discount line so that the line shows the discount, which means that actually it would appear our net sales are pretty static, irrelevant of whether we discount or we don't. So there's a nice bit of insight straight away. We can also throw in more visuals. This is a territory piece now. So I've thrown it in there and ticked territory. And it's now going to show me all the territories that I've sold into. The bigger the box, the more sales we've had in that territory. And then we can filter, and this is the power. So I'm going to filter for all covers. It immediately shows me all the products that are covers. I tick this Clippy cover. It immediately filters down all my net sales to only the sales that are covers, and they are that Clippy cover. It then shows me in the territory, the darker area is the area where we sold covers, Clippy covers in April, and we sold $150,000 worth. In about 3 clicks, I've gathered that insight. I understand that in April what our sales were. And I don't have to go away every single time someone says, well, what were our sales in March? I don't have to go away and download spreadsheets and work all that out again. That data is there now for me forever. All I need to do is filter. And if I want to get more insight, I can right click in a territory to expose, and we choose something called drill down, where we expose the states that are underneath it. So you can see in Indiana, of that $150,000, $52,201 all came from Indiana. But I can see on the graph on the other side that it looks like there was a huge amount of sales in April. And that is confirmed over here. Right? Almost all of the sales that we did for this particular Clippy cover in April were in Indiana. We might be asking a question as, well, what happened in April that caused such an increase in sales in that particular period? Now, we might then go away and say, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. It might have been that we were having a big marketing activity. We had a big business conference. Whatever it was, we exhibited somewhere and we sold loads of these Clippy covers because we had them on the stand. But there's an assumption. Now, we don't have the data to back that up in this graph, but there's nothing stopping me also bringing in maybe our marketing spend into this environment. Let's bring our accounts data into it and say, oh yeah, we spent in April, we made loads and loads of sales, but we also had a huge cost, right? Because we exhibited at this event, and we can start to drill down and actually work out the profit, all right? So this is a very, very easy way for you to drag data together and start to interrogate and cut it up. And you can see how simple that was. We have just built a dashboard in about a minute, and as long as the data behind it was all there. That's the clever bit. Okay, but the ability to ask questions of the platform is very, very simple once you get your head around it. So, how we use AI, okay, and I'm showing you the fun bit at the beginning, all right? It gets much more boring in a minute, by the way. But AI is obviously a key topic, right? If you don't really understand the data, the structure, how it works behind the scenes, you may struggle to build some of these visuals, okay? So what I wanted to show you here really was that AI is brilliant, and we're going to get to that end example that I showed you a few minutes ago. But there are other things that are quite intelligent. Now, I might not really understand the data that it's showing me at this point, right? I might not be able to pick together why that was such a spike in April. Okay, but if I right click on that graph and I choose analyze, Power BI will give me an explanation as to why it thinks that number was a certain way. All right, and it's saying here that e-commerce accounted for X, Y, and Z. Okay, and the Middle East accounted for the majority of the increase in that territory. It's giving me insight, not just based on the graph and the visual that I'm looking at, but the whole data set, all of those things that are on the right hand side in the fields area, it's having a good guess as to why it thinks that's a certain way. And of course, if we had the marketing information in there, it may well have said it was a huge spike because there was a massive payment made to a marketing company in Indiana. I'm guessing, of course, but who knows? One of the really, really powerful widgets that exists in Power BI is the influencers widget. And here we are dragging in an influencer widget and I'm throwing some data into it. So again, you can see I'm just ticking boxes. It's quite simple, really. And I'm saying, look at my net sales, look at the territory, and also the products. So we're saying how much we sold, in what area, and what products did we sell. And the information it's coming back with there is it's saying that actually there's a few influences. And what we mean by that is that if you sell the platinum model, you're more likely, obviously our net sales goes up by almost £3,000. That might be obvious, right? Because it's a platinum product, it's more expensive. That does make sense. But what's interesting is to flick that around the other way and say what influences our net sales to go down so much. And again, it's pretty obvious, right? Because we're selling the smallest product now, the 8 gig model. But what Power BI also does is create these segment things, right? It works out within your platform where are the key drivers, what are the chunks that steer a decision in a certain direction. I've chosen segment 5 here. And what that's telling me is that if I sold a platinum model in the Midwest, I'm likely to get more net sales. In other words, I sell lots of platinum products in the Midwest. In fact, it accounts for 16.8% of all of the data that it has available. And the average net sale is around £4,000. Very, very useful, right? Now, I didn't need to create a graph, a visual, anything to go and do that. That's Power BI, the AI element, surfacing that information and giving me visibility of data that I don't even know I need to ask. But it's saying this is important, right? You're aware that if you do this and you sell that product in this area, in this territory, or this particular salesperson sells it, you're going to make more money. Obviously, that might not be the drive. It might be to increase quality, better service, whatever it might be. And then probably the most powerful tool in the whole deck is the ability to use Q&A, which again is another widget. You just drag it in. Okay, it's now got access to all of those data sets, all those fields that are on the right hand side, and I can ask it direct questions. So net sales, 3-month moving average. Okay, brilliant. It might give me some answers on that. I can then go a bit further and say, order that by date. So I've got a line graph there. Fantastic. For a particular product. So now I'm looking at 3-month moving average, order it by date for a particular product. In other words, are our sales going up for that particular product, all right? But also then include geography. So now I've got multiple lines. So it's saying, you can see in the Midwest, we had a $76,000 average across that period that I'm looking at with that line. But of course, all the other lines there are giving me the same thing. So I guess what I'm saying to you is with the ability to just drag one widget in, as long as you've got the data behind it, you don't need to be a Power BI expert. You don't need to be able to build Power BI reports, but you do need to learn how to ask questions. Now, asking it for an example of this might be that you probably have lots of different terms for customers. Okay, some people will call them clients, some people might call them accounts, some people might call them customers. And of course, if I went in here and my data behind the scenes referred to all of my customers as clients, and I went in and said, how many customers did we sell to and whatever, it probably wouldn't be able to answer it because the data sees those things not as customers but as clients. That's a term that we use in our data sets. So it's very important to structure what's behind the Power BI platform or the data analytics platform correctly. Another good opportunity might be me asking a question, or another example, sorry, would be how many customers are in this area? Or and let's say how many customers are in Cornwall, for example. So, and it might come back and give me that answer. But if the data behind the scenes sees a customer as somebody who's transacted with you, as opposed to maybe an opportunity that you're exploring at the moment, or somebody that's in your mailing list or anything like that, you might get skewed information. So you've got to be careful what you ask, right? Because you've got to make sure that you say, what's the total addressable market might be a better term, okay? In which case it's going to find all the information that's everyone's an opportunity, everyone that's a lead, everyone that's actually a customer. That might be a better way of approaching it. So it's important to structure the data behind Power BI. And I appreciate that's a conversation that some of you may do, some of you probably don't care about, all right? But it's important to understand how to ask a question in the same way it's true of everything that's AI based. How you ask your question is 90% of the problem, all right? And understanding how to prompt and find the art of it is the key here, all right? Right, so when I'm now sitting in let's say a board meeting, all right, and I've been asked a question, right? Why did our net sales increase so much in Indiana in April? Now it might be that the board or the senior management, or the sales meeting, they want more insight, more information about that. And of course, I've got a few options. I could go out and buy them all Power BI licenses, and they could log into Power BI and draw that down themselves. Or it might be easier that I just give them that data. All right, I just want to be able to inform my wider team on the data that I have. And a great way of doing that, without spending loads and loads of money on Power BI, is to create things called paginated reports. So once I've got that graph, I could drill down, I can find the information, and I can turn it into a paginated report. And what I mean by this is that this is a Power BI dashboard you're looking at the moment, and we're going to view the report. And what it will end up looking like once I take it out and I put it in page view, what it will look like is a PDF document. It looks like that. Okay, so these are blocks of data, okay, things that we want to understand and digest. And we've taken it out to a page doc. And if I scroll down, you can see that there's page 1 of 6. And if I tab across and we go to the next page and the next page, we're going to have more territories effectively. So we've got the New England territory, and if I go across again, we've got the Northeast territory. And this is giving me a snapshot. This is a great report that I might want to share with a wider collective group. Okay, I can take this report out as static information. It can go into Word, it can go into PowerPoint, it can come out to a PDF document already, right? People do not need a Power BI license to be able to view that static content. They absolutely need it to be able to drill in, but for static stuff, great. So we can take that and I'm going to subscribe it. So I'm saying now, take this static report, create a PDF, turn it into a PDF document, send it to my sales team in this scenario on a recurring event. So every week, what I'm going to do, maybe I'm a sales manager or lead, and I'm going to say every week, send this paginated report with all these stats, all these territories to everyone in the sales team, or maybe individuals, maybe sales managers in those territories, whatever it might look like. Or it might be to the wider board. It might be to the senior management team. It might be whoever it needs to go to. I'll let your imagination run with that. But think about this, right? We've now got data being pulled out by Power BI and sent off to various parts of our business. Now that's easy. Those users will receive an email, but this document is a PDF document attached. They do not need a Power BI license to open that document. It's just a PDF document. Take that a little bit further when we think about things like automation. What happens when we send that information, not to someone's email account, but we send it into a trigger inside something like Power Automate, okay? What we end up with in that scenario is the ability to say, when maybe our sales in August are 50% lower than they were last August, we can trigger an action that says, we need to react. Send an email to a sales manager, send it to that person, that territory, whatever it needs to do, explain why this has happened, what's going wrong. We can capture that information. And this is the importance of data within the business. Understanding and capturing key swings at the earliest opportunity so that you can move and react to it as fast as possible. So automation is key. That might be that it sends an email off on the back of Power Automate when a piece of data changes, when it breaches an operational agreement or level, or when it breaches a service level agreement, whatever it might look like. It might just be based around sort of sales and things like that as well. So paginated reports, very, very useful. Also a great way to cut costs a little bit if you don't necessarily even want to have Power BI access, okay? And then another key aspect we've got here is it's great if I have access to all this information and I have all this insight and all this high level understanding of the data across our business as a manager in it, but it's not really any good if I've got to digest that data and then I've got to write an email out to everybody to give them access. So one of the things that I encourage you to think about is how can you enable your teams, all right, so that they have access to that data. There's a problem with this, right? Because of course, if we enable our teams to go in and look at this data, yeah, I thought that wasn't moving. Then I was getting scared. What we're going to end up with is a scenario where I probably need to start creating different reports. I've got visibility of lots and lots of data, but I don't want, maybe I'm the sales director, so I've got visibility of all of the territories within my organization in this example, right? But actually what I want is each salesperson just to see their own. I don't want them seeing the wider sales organization, because what we're going to end up with is salespeople in the Northeast going, oh, I'm beating everybody else. They might take their foot off the pedal and might calm down a bit. Not ideal, not what we want. So what we're going to do in this scenario, and what's happening on screen right now, is I'm going to create and load in an extra bit of data. Okay, I've taken a spreadsheet and I've loaded it into the platform. This is part of the process ETL. So effectively, I've taken a spreadsheet. It's got lists of people, all right, and the territories they're in. I'm currently transforming that data. So I'm saying all of these territories are owned by the people with these email addresses. Right? Once I'm happy with that data that I've curated, I'm going to import it into my model. It's telling me about a security risk there because I'm bringing external data in. So it's saying, making sure you're happy with that. Yeah, no problem at all. So we press OK. And what we're going to end up with is a little table within our environment. There's no relationship to anything here. Now, I appreciate this is a bit technical. There are some of you that are technical on the call, so hopefully this is making a bit of sense to you. But we're going to create a relationship between those sets of data. We've got people and territories. For those slices and those dices to work, where I can filter things down, at the moment, territory is just a string of text that says Northeast in it. So we need to create a relationship so that when we kind of create a filter within the territory and the assignments area, it filters everything else. It understands what a territory is in the rest of my data. Okay, so this is a little bit technical. I apologize. But what we're ending up with here is this link down. Whenever I choose that territory, it's going to filter everything else. So let's go and create a visual. Let's chuck it in the dashboard, and hopefully this will all make sense in a minute. So we're going to throw a graph in. We're going to choose territory, and then we're probably going to want to compare territory against something else for our chart. So let's compare it against our net sales. Fantastic, nice piece of insight straight away. We can see that most of our sales are happening in the southern and Midwest regions. No problem at all. But great report, good for me to see. Don't want all my sales team to see everybody's results. I want them to see their own. Now, I always want them on their toes and keep moving, etc., etc. So what I'm going to do is go and create a rule, some roles, all right? And in here, I'm going to create a salespeople role. And then I'm going to go to assignments, and I am going to go and choose an email value. And what we're going to say now is that when a user logs in, they have some kind of username. Okay, so what we're saying is if the email field in that data I just dragged in matches the username that they logged into Power BI with, then effectively we're going to apply a filter to this data. That's what's going on here, all right? So we're going to apply that setting to the dashboard, and then we're going to try and see what it looks like when if we were to log in as Diego, for example. So we pop Diego's email address in, and if Diego had logged in and looked at this report, what he's going to end up seeing, hopefully, is just the region that he works in. Now, why is this important? And this is probably the point we need to get to. It's important because I don't want to create 7 reports for all of my salespeople. I want to create one Power BI dashboard where its data is filtered down. Okay, I don't want to create very similar. See, lots of organizations have got big spreadsheets with territories and passwords on there so that individuals can't see various sheets within a spreadsheet, only perhaps their own. And that isn't ideal, right? Well, I can create one dashboard that, even based on who I am, filters the data that I have visibility of. If I had an AI widget in there, it would only answer based on the data that I have the ability to see. So very, very powerful again. So there are a few things that we've covered here, and these are all very high level, okay? And we do have a number of challenges that we need to get across when we start talking about data, all right? All of this, I appreciate, I've focused in on sales, all right? I've focused in on a sales dashboard in this example. It can be applied to anything, right? Anything where you store digital information. And hopefully you grasp that. It's just easier to talk about sales, in all honesty. But it's only the report that you get out is only as good as the data you put in. And I'm sure you've heard that term before. If your data doesn't match up, if it's a mess, if it doesn't really have any structure to it, then you're not really going to get a huge amount of benefit out of Power BI, because you're just going to get a lot of garbage out. So there's this process called extracting, transforming, and loading. Right? Extracting is about pulling raw data in from lots of sources. Transforming is all about manipulating that data, effectively building a scaffold around it and slotting data into the right areas, creating relationships so that when you refer to a territory in your CRM platform, a moment ago we dragged that thing and dropped territory and we made a link. What that was doing was saying, here's all territories in our CRM platform and here's all the territories in our account system, let's say. And it creates a link between the two. So the two things act as the same thing. So when I filter some data over an account, it automatically filters all the data over in the CRM platform as well. It's about creating relationships between data sets. That is an SQL analyst sort of role, typically, if you've ever heard that term. I appreciate it's probably not straightforward. It is the sort of thing you might need to get external support with. But there are some challenges about cleansing that data and then finally loading it into Power BI and building visuals around it, okay? Also, what's really, really critical is you understand what you're trying to ask. I said that with the AI piece, right? If you don't know what you're trying to get out of it, then you're never really going to see any benefit of it, right? It will prompt you, it will give you some ideas, some things, interesting facts for you to go and look at. But the more you know what you're trying to get out, the more effective this is going to be, all right? So define the requirement. Okay, that's what's this dashboard trying to show you. Don't build one dashboard that shows you everything about the business. Build a dashboard that shows you profit, loss, products, services. If you need to, and you want to be able to filter those on based on different things, like we did today in our presentation, where we said the type of product and a particular product, and then it filters our sales. But the purpose of the dashboard was about looking at our net sales. Right? That was its role. So try not to confuse dashboards too much with loads of information. And the third question to ask yourself is that some of this is simple, some of this really isn't, in all honesty. Do you have the skills internally to develop that? If you've started to build those dashboards, what happens if you've got an individual that's running your Power BI platform and then that individual leaves or leaves the organization or for whatever reason? Do you have the ability and the skills to then pick that up? And if you're utterly dependent upon that data to make informed decisions and it starts breaking because Salesforce did an update and it doesn't work anymore, you've got a bit of a problem. So find yourself individual, maybe a team, maybe a partner, third-party partner that can work with you to keep those things alive. And also, when you start to get into the world of data, I encourage you to really look at that Power BI and the Microsoft stack, because there are so many Microsoft partners in the country, right? They are all very well versed in Power BI. If you go down the road of kind of specific tools within specific industries, you are completely dependent and reliant upon that vendor to give you the support they need. And if they don't give you, if it can't represent the information you need, you're going to have to wait for them to write it. This gives you the power to generate your own data and compare it against whatever you like. So it's an incredibly useful tool. Now, we've got over a very high level. I just want to point out that we did do a webinar on Power BI a few months ago, where we covered like how to create your first report, some of those sort of advanced features. And I appreciate today we've gone a little bit technical, we've gone a little bit high level, but we're trying to talk about the data rather than Power BI as a whole. If you're interested in that, go scan that QR code or go to our website, go to our blog, and there's some information in there around what you can do with Power BI. Lots of other webinars as well, which hopefully many of you have seen. but it also covers some of the things to avoid, pitfalls that you might find when you try and do a Power BI report and you start to struggle, right? So where are you going to learn some more information? As always, you can go online, okay, go to app.powerbi.com. Within there, when you open up Power BI, there's loads of like sample data sets. So you don't need to load data in necessarily. You can just kind of say, hit some sample data and play around with it. If you've got spreadsheets and you've got data in your spreadsheets, maybe within the finance team or sales teams or whatever, then drag that data up, chuck it into Power BI, and you'll be able to start to kind of cross-reference some of those data sets and columns and build graphs and whatnot. Obviously, as always, we're here. Come and speak to us. If you're one of our customers, then we're always happy to come and have a chat with you. And if you're not one of our customers, surprise, surprise, we're also happy to come and have a chat with you. But there's lots of stuff on our blog and our website and bits and pieces around it. And then thirdly, it's not a webinar unless I say Copilot. So if you've got Copilot, or if you've got Microsoft 365 now, and you do to log into your 365, you'll be thrown this thing called Copilot. This is ChatGPT baked into your Office 365 environment, and you can start to ask that questions that it will source from the web. If you've got a paid-for version of Copilot, it'll even start to advise you on how to build those Power BI dashboards, or even build them for you. So that's probably a topic for another day. So hopefully today you've got some insight. I appreciate it's a bit of a weird conversation. Try to make it relatively interesting. But if there are any questions, feel free to fire them in the corner. We have zipped through it today. You're going to get a good 20 minutes of your day back. So hopefully that's useful. So if you've got any questions, feel free to throw them in. If I put you to sleep, then you are welcome to leave, and hopefully we'll see you again, and you can come and join us again soon. So we have got a question here for those of you that are interested. In fact, there are a few here. So sharing static data using paginated reports is useful, but perhaps you can expand on other licensing options that would enable us to share live information with colleagues. Yeah, sure. So effectively, Power BI is within Business Premium, as I mentioned, you can actually have the ability to effectively create your own data and create your own reports. So if you've got Business Premium, you can go and open up app.powerbi.com and you can control the data or the reports that you're creating, but only really for yourself. If you want to share data with other people, then you need a Power BI Pro or Premium license. Okay, and based on whether it's Pro or Premium, gives you lots of different connectors and lots of different abilities to plug into different sources. Power BI Pro allows you to create reports and share them with other people that have Power BI Pro licenses, okay, and they can access that. If you've got lots and lots and lots of staff and all they need to do is look at that data and drill down, there is something called it's called a premium workspace. So Power BI Premium Workspace. And what that means is you pay a bigger chunk of money for a workspace that exists inside Power BI, but you can publish reports into that, and then anybody can go and log in, all right, and start to dig around inside those reports, and they don't need a Power BI license. Okay, so a premium workspace might be the answer if you've got lots of staff that need read access. Power BI Pro is probably the answer if you've got lots of users that want to be able to create their own visuals, their own dashboards, and filter and work on it like that. The truth is, in my experience, most people have got a couple of Power BI Pro licenses, and those users are the people generating the dashboards, and they're typically publishing that stuff up into a premium workspace so that the wider business can access it and see it. And obviously, we still have all those sort of questions and bits and pieces around building a single report, but cutting down the visibility of all the data so that only individuals can see the data that's relevant. So hopefully that answers your question. If you want to pick that up, please feel free to reach out. We can go through that. Any more questions from anybody? I'm getting lots of thank yous, which is lovely. I always appreciate that. For Copilot to work effectively, do you need Power BI as well? No, absolutely not. So Copilot looks at all of your files and folders and data that exists on your work environment within Microsoft 365. So in a nutshell, with BI, if you bring Power BI in, then yeah, absolutely, Copilot can look at that as a source of data and start to make informed decisions and build your Power BI reports and that sort of stuff. But you don't need Copilot. Power BI is not required for Copilot to work. It just limits what it can see. If you don't have Power BI, then it's not going to be able to analyze your business data. It's only going to be able to look at files and folders and bits and pieces. If you do have Power BI and you start to plug it into your Salesforce platforms, your CRMs, all the other things that exist, the third-party services where you ingest information, then you are definitely going to be able to use Copilot to ask questions of that data, similar to the demo we showed earlier on, okay? Any more questions, anybody? Wonderful, right. Well, I'm going to give you 20 minutes of your day back then. Hopefully that was useful. I appreciate it's quite a complicated topic, so hopefully it wasn't too confusing. So, but if you want to go in more detail, please do reach out to us. We've also got another webinar coming up next month, I believe, Sam, isn't it? Yeah. Talking about how to hack an SME and how to stop it. Okay, so we're not really teaching you how to hack an SME, but what we are really focusing on is we will show you some of the tools that would be used. Okay, but the aim here really is to help you make sure you prevent some of these simple attacks. We've had Marks and Spencers and Harrods in the last few weeks, all kind of compromised by really simple attacks. Those things massively could have been prevented by very simple steps, very affordable steps. And what we're looking to do there is just show you really how easy it is. If you don't have things like MFA turned on, for example, how easy this is going to be to compromise the system. We talk in the news all the time about the M&Ss and the Harrods and the big businesses. We never talk about the SMEs, but I tell you, the quantity of SMEs that get hacked in comparison to the enterprise level is off the chart. So we just don't hear about it in the press because it's not as exciting as Marks and Spencers and Harrods. So be aware. What we're looking to do there really is advise you and give you a bit of an insight of how these malicious actors work, some of the tools they use, and some of the things you can do to prevent them from getting in. All right. But until then, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will hopefully see a lot of you again next month. Cheers. Take care. Bye bye.